So the topic of today is to upgrade or not upgrade. And I remember when a Windows machine came with a new or Windows came with a new operating system, and you needed to upgrade. I mean, it was no other options. Your machines, your PCs were really powerful for 6 months. Okay. And at 6 months, they start choking, and it's time to start considering the needs of upgrade. That is not true anymore. Yes, if you want to be on the latest and the fastest, you can upgrade. But your equipment, your PCs, your tablets, your phones last now way longer. We are processing wise from those chips. They have so much power that they can last now many generations. Even my last MacBook, um, now is getting to the point that it's obsolete, but it was declared by Apple obsolete, and I got it, reformat, or split the drive, install Windows, and my kid play with that one. Even he was younger, but he played with that machine for 2.5, 3 years more without the need. The
Hmm.
power, processing power still was powerful enough. So comes to the sorry, come with the question, should we upgrade? I'm looking at the technology around me, and what if this technology, if I'm truly honest, okay, we're not talking about the geek heart of me who wants to upgrade anything, okay,
Right.
but if I am truly honest, what in this office needs um the upgrades? And one of the
That,
things, for example, yeah,
yeah.
go.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
One of the things, for example, that took me to get an honest assessment was my cell phone. Okay.
Now, those are a great example of this.
Cell phone companies want you to upgrade every year. Fine. Okay. And I went at some point and said, okay, why do I'm upgrading this iPhone again? The iPhone, it's my phone of choice, but
Hmm.
it's not in any way, shape, or form my main device. My main device is an iPad. I use the phone because I need to receive phone calls, and the watch only connect to the phone. Is if they remove that, I can get a virtual number as I have in the office and pick them in the iPad, but they don't. So I went and I started looking. Okay, why
Hmm.
do I need to upgrade again? And that was the moment that I decided that I was going to upgrade the iPhone and upgrade to the next iPhone when they said you cannot upgrade to the latest operating system on this phone anymore. And I've been doing that for the last
Right.
two upgrades.
And I think this is a really important delineation that we have to make in this is there's this isn't really a conversation around the bleeding edge, cutting edge, early adopter mindset when it comes to upgrading devices.
Correct.
Upgrading something because it improved. This is more the general philosophy of at what point should I upgrade a device? What should be the compelling thought process behind it? And cell phones are a great example of that. We see cell phones come out every year, and well, every year as a upgrade. I'm doing air quotes for that because in many cases they aren't really significant upgrades between model years, year over year.
They
Samsung
can't.
does that. Well, they can't. They focus around a particular feature set and they try to say, hey, you should really upgrade to have these features. Well, now I'm going to make the argument, okay, so are you thinking that your use case and your need case has changed and it just happens to match that new feature that is coming out so much that you need to get that device? Or are you finding you have a need because you've been told you have a need because this new feature is out there? Now, there are certain lines that you should use as markers within your decision making process. One, for example, is if a device is no longer supported from a security standpoint. And we've talked about this. If you have, say, an iPhone or an Android device or a Windows machine or a Chromebook that is just long enough in the tooth where it does not get security updates anymore. It does not support the latest version of the operating system or the most stable, let's rephrase that, the most stable version of the operating system that it runs on, then it may be worth considering looking at an upgrade. Even though that device could still be meeting your use case wonderfully, security should always be a primary concern.
I agree.
That said, though, I would make the argument that the majority of time we upgrade prematurely. And we do that because we're not getting the most out of the device we have in the first place, much less the new device that could be coming down the path. And I'm going to use Chromebooks as a perfect example of that. If you're a heavy Chromebook user and you're using browser-based apps and you're using it for email, and have your needs significantly changed when the new version of that machine comes out or an equivalent machine? Do you suddenly have a new purpose? Well, if you don't, then is there actually a compelling reason? Now, again, there may be hardware reasons. There may be reasons where the device just is not living up to its spec as it did in the past. But I think many of the arguments we see about upgrading our technology are really want driven. They're not need driven. And we
They
have to
are.
be careful of that.
They are. And I can give you an example for me. Okay. Right now, we are recording this in a MacBook. Okay. It was the MacBook that when my beloved MacBook Air 11-inch died, or was, it didn't die because I said went to my kid, but it went now obsolete. There is no more upgrades. Great. Then I went and upgrade that machine to a new MacBook. Okay. And the new MacBook is here. And when is the record studio, is what his microphones are connected, all that for podcasting and courses and programming and all that. But when this machine need to be upgraded, okay, and the answer for me is when the software gets obsolete again. Okay, why? This machine main purpose is this, is the video, is recording. But for example, when I move it, I had an iPad there before. Okay. The iPad has what Apple calls center stage, and it's that the camera centering you and zoom in on you. Okay. So when I put this Mac in there, when I rearranged the office the last time for a project, I noticed, oh, this Mac doesn't have center stage.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Well, now comes the question. Do that mean I need to upgrade or not? Okay. And as you can see, if you're seeing the video, the decision was no. But that is where they got you, and they were try. As you said, it's not a need. There is nothing in this machine that I require more power. Okay. It's something that I like the thing that the thing zoom in automatically. That's it. But the same happened with the Chromebooks. And that is the reason my criteria is software upgrades. And it's exactly what you said. It's security. Okay. There's the moment, doesn't matter if it's Microsoft, doesn't matter if it's Apple, doesn't matter if it's Google, are not supporting that hardware anymore. The security upgrades don't come anymore. That's the moment that you get rid of it and get a new one.
Now, go ahead.
But pay attention, because depending your comfort level and geekness, you can do things that are ridiculously cheaper. So for example, my kit MacBook, okay, the one that I mentioned that is obsolete on Apple perspective, even that Apple still do security upgrades for the old operating system. Okay, it has a Windows 10 that Microsoft still do security update for it. And I, on top of that, install Chromium. So he can turn his machine and play in a Windows, in a Mac, or in a Chromebook. And with that, even that the hardware technically is obsolete, all the software is still covered but by those security upgrades. Maybe not as fast as a newer hardware, but it is still covered.
Well, and that's a really that's a really important term to think about, is that concept of obsolescence and defining obsolescence. When we talk about hardware being obsolete, often it goes back to, well, it can't run the latest and greatest. Yeah, but can it still do a job? And that's what I find honestly so frustrating at times. Things like Chromebooks, my favorite thing to talk about this episode. Uh, Older Chromebooks still work great. They still work fine. You can still use it. However, they have a built-in obsolescence date based on updates. Fine, but does that mean that device cannot function? Absolutely not. It's a nice little device, does its job. But there was some decision to say that at this point, this is now obsolete. It does not meet a standard. So that said, can take obsolescence with a grain of salt in many cases. But the second part that I think really need to think about too for our upgrade path for devices is the difficulty of that upgrade. When we think about things like phones, if you stay within a manufacturer, if you have an iPhone and you get another iPhone, upgrading from one to the next is a pretty easy process. They have the tools in place. You can transfer the content. The next phone works. You're good. Same within the Samsung realm. You can upgrade phones easily enough from an operating system standpoint. Changing manufacturers, if you're going from an iPhone to an Android or vice versa, that's a much more complicated process. Chromebooks, easy, built in because everything's in the cloud. Windows machines, you better get a good stiff drink because this is going to take a while. Even with all the attempts to try and make the process as easy as possible, guaranteed you are still going to have difficulties and challenges. And that's where you have to consider as part of the cost of an upgrade. Even though you may want the latest and greatest laptop, for example, or the latest and greatest monitor configuration, monitors are easy enough. But even that is still going to require a little bit of configuration and work. But if we think about that laptop, you're going to have days where you're going to go, wait, this is not set up the way it was. It's just not designed to be easily replaced, which I find very interesting about this tech. There's a push consistently to upgrade to the latest and greatest. Why is it not made easier to upgrade to the latest and greatest? Once you get into a device, you're kind of entrenched there. But when the new things come out, well, now you should move to that. Yeah, but I don't know how. The majority of the population, I challenged people listening to this, the majority of the population out there do not know how to successfully upgrade a Windows machine. Flat out. Guarantee they're going to have issues. And I'd love to hear somebody who comes in and says, yep, I've done it 5 times, never had an issue in any time. That's amazing. And I'd love to know why you're only using WordPad. Because that's that's about the scope of what we're talking about here. I mean,
But
if you're dealing with good, powerful software, then yeah, you're going to have complications.
and it's interesting what you said because it's true. And I think Google and Apple, okay, specifically, has done a much better job into that upgrade. Okay, into hey, you're going to a new Chromebook? Fine. Let me find your backup, let me find and let me restore in your new machine what works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Windows is still complicated. Why? It's there is no reason
It's
to
Windows.
make it complicated. Well, but I tried to keep that soapbox in that corner of my office.
That's why I went there. I totally concur that they are part of their own problem.
They are, but it's still what part of the problem is. First is make the decision. Okay, great. I really want that new hardware. Great. Now, how easy are you going to make that change for me? And if you are relatively technologically savvy, fine. Otherwise, you may hold it and or need to wait until that more technologically savvy person comes to your life. happened to me last year. My dad laptop is a Windows, die. Okay. And I spent more time convince him to stay
Hmm.
in the iPads, okay, that getting him a new. Why? Because he lives far. Okay. I cannot do it remotely easily, mostly because not because the technology doesn't allow me to do it, but because it's my dad. Okay, so
Right.
when I tell him connect it to this and let me work into the machine, he freaks out when I'm doing all that. So it's not an easy process because it's my dad. Okay, and finally I convince him. Okay, get a you are using your iPad right now. Why we don't get you? Well, I want a second monitor. Let's get you a second iPad, and you will have everything synchronized and fine. So finally I convinced him. So I went to the Apple store going to buy an iPad, and suddenly I froze. Say, his iPad is this model. If I give them a different model, I am going to be called a bazillion times why the button or doesn't have the button or this doesn't work. So my solution was, dude,
Hmm.
I need to work into getting two devices, two new devices, or but my son iPad, who was exactly the same one as grandpa, buy it from him, upgrade him, and send grandpa the other one.
Hmm.
And that was what I did. And I did it because in my dad is so technologically behind that if I give them the two iPads, the first question was going to be, where is the button? And that
Hmm.
is a problem that I understand I will need to deal in the next upgrade, but I push that thing.
Yeah.
It's like,
See, that's a really interesting point about that. It's something that jumps out to me a lot too. Uh, when I deal with people who want multiple monitors, for example, I always like to surreptitiously apply what I call the Alt Tab test, which is to ask them before they want, three monitors set up on a desk in this big panoramic view, if they know what Alt Tab does and the ability to jump between windows with just a keystroke. So many of them, so many, the lion's share, have never hit Alt Tab even once. They have no idea how it functions. They don't use it. They don't utilize it to any sort of an effective level if they do. But once they start doing that, it's like, yeah, that's not bad. I like that feature. I like that feature a lot. But then they still can't get past the fact that they want a bunch of monitors.
but
So,
it goes back to what I've been saying and teaching to people for years. You know, you buy an iPad, okay? Now you just bought a, let's say, a $500 computer, okay? That's the iPhone. No, the iPad,
mhm.
sorry. But the problem is most people don't know how to do it, how to use it.
Well, yeah,
And that apply, by the way, to the Chromebook, the Windows, the
yeah.
MacBook. Okay. This is not about the iPad. The iPad is what I teach. But
Hmm.
and when I said, well, I've been iPad only, okay, since the iPad was released. Okay. I remember when the iPad was released and I discovered, okay, this machine did not replace fully my laptop. I was in
Hmm.
complete agreement, but it replaced so many things that then whatever it is, I can wait when I used to travel at that time. I'm not traveling anymore, but at that time, I was
Hmm.
traveling 250,000 miles a year. So whatever get into that sacred space of my bag, okay, it was heavy, and I was going to carry that thing the whole week.
Yeah.
I remember when I replaced the two laptops for two iPads. Okay. Not only that, it was light. Okay. I was able to, I'm sure you, our listeners have seen those videos, the evolution of the computer and how they start from a room and then getting smaller and smaller. That was the story with my
Yeah.
back too. Start getting lighter and lighter. Okay.
That looks like
By
my career path.
yeah, my bag at some point was a 65-pound bag. Okay, because a
Right.
doctor measured it. Okay, because I carried two laptops, a scanner, a bunch of crap. The iPad give me that. I don't, I carry two iPads with me all the time, but I can really go back with one. There is reasons is I have certain clients who have their devices so locked that I want one completely free and one that is locked by the clients.
Hmm.
Okay. But learn to use this device. There is an article very recent, and I can send it to put it in the show notes. Okay, where this person was saying, "Oh well, I um got rid of my laptops, got rid of my tablets, and now I'm using my phone. It's a Samsung phone with the Dex technology."
Right.
You and I have been discussing Dex
Hmm.
technology for at least 10 years.
Well, and the new version of Android, Android 16, is going to have an equivalent, or the talk is it's going to have an equivalent desktop level capability built into the operating system. So we're starting to see more and more, at least in the Android space, devices that are recognizing how powerful that particular device is. I wonder when Apple's going to do that. When are they going to invent that?
I
So,
mean, I'm ready for it, but it hasn't come. But I've been ready for 10 years. I have been, if you have listening to me long enough, you have heard me complain. I want the Dex technology on my iPad hardware. But
mhm.
but again, the problem is not who have access to this technology. The problem is most people is not even aware that their Samsung device can do that.
Do you think it's a case of just too many features? And I want to use the analogy of getting a new car. You get a new car, you look at all the bells and whistles, and like 6 months after having that new car, you're still finding features. There are things in that car that you have no idea what the heck they are, why they are, what they do. And is that a matter of you got that car because it had all those features? Or are they just putting so many features into things, hoping that they will find an audience for a feature that will compel somebody to buy that thing? I
I
mean,
think similar.
not to sound like a Luddite, but have things gotten overly complicated?
I think they're not necessarily getting overly complicated. It's I think the average is afraid of the technology.
See,
Okay,
but
we
well, I don't know that I would say, well, in some cases they're afraid, but I think in many cases, fear can also come from a perspective of, is there just too much stuff to find? I mean, think about, you're Mr. iPad, you're Mr. iPhone. What percentage of those devices would you say you know? I mean, I'm all about my Samsung Ultra. I mean, inside now. And I would still say I maybe know 70% of the device, and that's being generous.
Yeah, I would probably say that 70 to 80% in my case. But I can tell you, in my clients, I start clients that know how to turn the iPad barely. Okay, that
Hmm.
knows one or two things. They don't know. No, I have shared this story. Okay, I had a client who he was carrying three devices. Okay,
Hmm.
a tablet, a laptop, and the phone. Okay, and I always ask this question to clients: what is your main device? In this particular case, his main device was his iPhone. And I asked him, well, but if that's your main device, why you're carrying all this?
Right.
Well, he didn't know how to do the couple of things that he was doing on the laptop, how to do them in a different device.
Hmm.
And after we work into the first, get him into really knowledge how to use the phone. Okay. He got rid of the other two devices. The laptop lives now in a desk. Okay. Got rid of the tablet. Okay. Yes, I love iPads, but in this client particularly, he didn't care for it. Okay,
Hmm.
because it didn't fit on his pocket. Okay. And what we got him was a keyboard. Okay. And he now carries the phone and the keyboard. Okay. Because he wanted part of the reason he was carrying the iPad, okay, it was a phone, an iPad, and a PC. Okay, the iPad he was carrying because of the keyboard. To
Hmm.
say when I sit and want to write emails, the screen is fine, but a keyboard, I cannot type too many emails in that screen. But this particular person didn't knew, didn't thought, call it
Right.
whatever, okay, that he could connect a full size keyboard to his phone and solve
Hmm.
this issue. Okay. Very simple issue to solve. But the problem is we look at these things as, oh, I don't know how to do it and I don't want to research. That is fine. Okay.
Yeah.
That is the reason you and I exist in this world. And I will never be, tired to say it. Find the person who will
Hmm.
play for hours trying to figure it out. And hey, because the aggravates, and I'm bringing when I start working with this client, okay, he told me, I don't know. He wasn't very convinced, okay, that
Hmm.
my services were worth, okay, what he was paying. Why am I going to pay for this? And that was our biggest struggle.
Sure.
Okay. But the
There's a.
reality is that
Mhm.
it was very clear for him and very fast, and I'm very lucky in that sense. Okay. What was the value? Because you, in the same way that I may never, you know, Art love cars and he has abilities that I don't even dream into have. Okay. For me, a car, I need to be able to come, and now it's even better because I don't even need to push the key. Okay. I push the button and that thing should turn on and go. That's as far as knowledge as interest I want to have about cars. Okay. My one of one of our cars died last week. I share with Art what was happening. Okay. And he said, oh, that is this or this or this. Okay. He was 100% accurate. I have zero interest. No.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't care. And that is fine. But then I will not try to rebuild a classic, even that I have dreams about that for
Hmm.
many years, until I hear, I think it was Jay Leno, when Jay Leno's show moved from Jay Leno to Jimmy Fallon.
Hmm.
Jimmy Fallon asked Jay, and he say, well, what do you recommend me if I want to, have a classic car or a new car?
Hmm.
What do you recommend me? And Jay Leno look at him and say, how many tools you have on your garage?
Hmm.
And Jimmy Fallon thought for a moment and say, I think I have a screwdriver and maybe pliers. And
Hmm.
Jay Leno look at him and say, please stick a car 3 years or younger.
Yes. Yeah. There's
But it's the
it,
same thing.
there's a criticality to this, and as we start to come to a close today, there is a criticality to understanding the difference of what you can do versus knowing how to do it.
Mhm.
And if you had to learn something, if I had to make a recommendation to people who were thinking about upgrading, take the time to learn what you can do with that device. And do you need to do said things? That time is far better spent because there's tons of how resources out there. But if you don't even know a thing is possible, you don't know to go looking for how to do it. We think about things like, camera apps on the phones. We know to take a picture, but we may not know how to edit that picture. Well, if we don't know it's even possible that we can edit the picture, we'll never go looking for how to do it. So, as part of our upgrade path on anything, knowing what something is capable of, but also knowing what specifically we need, I stress need, want is a different conversation, but what we need it to do should really set the minimum bar for what that upgrade's going to be.
That's correct. And I said I carry two iPads. Okay. And
Hmm.
recently I've been looking for a keyboard who had multiple devices. Okay, so I can put the iPad side by side and have the keyboard, and I just switch between one and the other. Okay.
Hmm.
And even that I play with technology, even that
Mhm.
I spend hours into this, okay, I have got multiple versions of, but most of those keyboards are designed to have one device. Okay, it's designed to one iPad. And recently, I there was an article from Federico Vitici where he is trying to get a MacBook, a headless MacBook, so he can use with his Vision Pro, but not have the monitor. Okay, and then he's showing this, and he's showing the iPad connecting and using as a main monitor when he do not have the Vision
Mhm.
Pro. And the moment I saw that, I say, oh, I've been trying to solve this problem completely wrong. I don't need a keyboard for iPad. I need a keyboard who has the multiple device and find something to hold the iPad. And that solved a problem that has been with me for longer than I care to admit. Okay. And this is me who love to play with these toys and these things. So keep yourself where you love to play and get the help for the people. Even when you say, okay, what I can do, sit with somebody. You want, don't talk to me. Talk to, you want to do photography? Talk to somebody who use photography and technology. I do
Mhm.
productivity. I don't do photography. Okay, great. But find that expert because in the long term, that expert will save you hours of frustration. And those, each one of those hours of frustrations, trust me, has a value.
Absolutely. And recognize that value and lean into it. So, all right, you want to take us out?
Yep. With this, follow us where you like to listen to podcasts, like us or subscribe to us and leave us a review. You can interact with us in personalproductivity.club. There is a channel there. There's a channel for other podcasts too. We are a Good Stupid Not and Argo Weeks. See you next time from your favorite device, maybe a new one.